Back at it with another video. Today we're talking about establishing a civilization. Establishing a civilization and sustaining it. What does that consist of? How do you establish a civilization and how do you sustain it? Well, since you asked that question, Mr. Chitindi Banda, how would we do that? Well, one would say you need resource management, right? Another would say you're going to need governance. Another would say you're going to need defense, right? One might also suggest you need economic and trade. Hold on. I'm going to say that's the only thing you need, right? But let's keep going. Another would say you're going to need infrastructure. Another man would say you're going to need education and knowledge. I would say that too, strongly. Another would say you're going to need culture and shared identity, and you're going to need healthcare and social works, and you're going to need environment and adaptability, disasters when they arise. Another would say you're going to need social coercion and adaptability to solve conflicts and have resolution systems, right? Basically a justice system. Well, I say the only thing majority that you need is economics and trade. If you have no economics and trade in your civilization, none of that stuff will work. To need justice, you need economics. To get infrastructure, you need economics. To get a working social ideology, you need economics. To fight the war, to win the battle of ideas. It comes down to economics. Economics is the last final thing. It's the only thing. So to understand economics and trade, what do you need to understand? You need to understand the history of trade itself. Let's talk about that. So to understand how to maintain and establish a civilization, hopefully for thousands and thousands of years, what you need to understand is the history of trade. And to understand the history of trade, you need to understand the history of money. It always seems to come back to the great question. What's money? What's money? Well, if you ask me, I always say money is a self-interest container. But let's stay in the realm of normies, of the economic fools, of the economists. They define money as they give it rather specifications it needs to meet. They classify it. So it has to have a unit of account. It has to be durable. It has to be divisible. It has to be fungible. It has to be portable. It has to be a medium of exchange. And then the most important one, it has to be a store of value. I simplify it personally. I just say money is simply your time, your energy, and your knowledge. Simple. And you can use sticks and your cattle to store it, or whatever, a rock, a stone, a piece of paper, a yen, a franc, pause, a dollar. It still comes back to that fundamental definition. To raise cattle, you needed to have the knowledge, the time, and the energy to do it. You store that in the cattle. That's your money, right? But it's just, you can argue it's not the best form of money. You could argue that. A Bitcoin, you could argue the internet's going to go out. You can make an argument for anything. But money, fundamentally, I say, like I said, your time, your energy, and your knowledge. So, let's speak of Athens, of the great ancient Athens, and what happened. Because Athens was the first society to have a true free market system. So let's talk about what happened and how money naturally found its way into Athens and how Athens became this glorious paradise that we read about today. So in order to understand how to sustain a civilization after establishing it, we need to understand What has caused civilizations like Athens to go extinct? What happened? So historically, there's been this seven stages of a civilization. They've mapped them out how it starts. Civilizations usually are established with integral money, gold and silver, quality money. That's stage one. Everything's fine. The money has integrity. Stage two begins, where we start funding social works, start funding the poor, the disabilities, the public works. Watching a few guys go at it for our entertainment. We start funding that. And then we start establishing a massive military base. I'm not saying what's happening now. I'm saying what's happened for thousands of years. 2000 years to be exact. 2500 years ago, since Athens was established. To today, every civilization in between that's what happened. Stage 3, military. Stage 4, they put their military to use. Go to war. Sounds familiar? Stage 5, debasing their currency by printing more to fund the war and the public works. Stage 6, the loss of confidence in the currency. Stage 7, the money starts to flow into assets that people deem are holding the value. Back to the first point, a store of value, which cuts right into my definition, I think, of where money comes from. I don't think money is printed or created. It emerges as a result of your energy, your time, and your effort. So, it's funny how these things just collide. At the end of a civilization, the money starts to flow towards the things that store your value. And I'm saying money is not stored, it emerges. And what do I say money is? A self-interest container. I'll constantly keep repeating this phrase until it sinks into you. Money is a self-interest container. Like I said, about 2,500 years ago, that should be around 3000 BCE. There was a war. And then whenever you speak about money, whenever you speak about self-interest, war seems to pop up. War just pops up. You have the Athens. Let's speak about Athens. I want to speak about Athens because it might sound like I'm speaking about today, but I'm simply just describing the same events we're experiencing today. Athens won a war with Sparta. And what happened? What started to happen? Deflation. They had to fund their war. Deflation obliterated Athens. They started to fund their war and public works and started to debase their currency. They started running out of gold. They couldn't mine the gold as much anymore. So what started to happen is they started to debase their currency. And naturally, whose law was that? Is it Graham's law? Where he says the good money will start to be retained and then the scarce money is retained and then the bad money is what stays in circulation. To translate that into moron terms is the fake money or the scam money or the fuck shit, pardon my French, is what you guys are spending. And what's retained is the good money. This actually, I could say for myself, I don't spend my Bitcoin, right? Because it's at least more scarce than a United States dollar. Just last week, I spent a $2 note. I've held that $2 note for 5 years, probably, if not more. I've kept it because I've never seen a $2 note as often as I see a dollar or a quarter. I still have some gold coins here, a dollar gold coin and so on. Those are rare. So I try not to spend them because they're like unique. Is it logical for me to do it? Well, it's silly now that I'm saying it, but it's just a natural law. Graham's law. So he's got a law that states an economic war. And then you said 431 to about 404 BC. That's the first time they also, that in Athens, that was the first time they started to, gold was usually priced or weighed. It was weighed. So you know the amount of gold you had through just weighing it, and then you can purchase a product. For the first time, gold had a price when they started to debase the currency. So it took a few copper notes, a copper mints to get a set amount of gold. So that was in that time frame. And then what happened? About 404 BC, Athens ultimately was financially deliberated, if that's the right term, or obliterated, because the debasing killed their civilization. History repeats. Remember the seven stages of a civilization. So in around 404 BC, Athens surrendered to Sparta because all that debasing of their currency just financially ruined them. Printing money, fake money. And just a quick comment here. Even today, you have all these people that resent the billionaires for producing an industry. Why? Why would somebody who's actually productive in society be resented? Think about the innate logic behind that. Why is somebody who's built a company that's helping my life be easier, created wealth from that, why do I hate this person? It's because the experience that the average person has with money is genuinely from a place of negative emotions. Why is that so? Is it money supposed to be the most virtuous thing? Why are the people with the highest net worths held at the highest moral virtue? You're not supposed to be caught with the wife cheating, or somebody's wife, or I'm not saying it's right, or with a girlfriend when you got a wife. If you're a billionaire, why? How does money equate to your moral obligation? It's unspoken rule, but we just innately know that money is the highest form of integrity, because we innately know that money is our self-interest. It's our stored self-interest. We do not want money. We want the things that money can provide for us. And what do the things we want? Things that are in our self-interest. Money is a self-interest container. Yeah. So basically we understand a few things now. The debasement of currency causes basically the collapse of a civilization. Hence my initial statement at the top of this video. There is no civilization without economics. Economics is the holding glue of an entire civilization. And what happened in 407 BC is that Greece became a satellite of Rome. After all those constant wars and constant debasing of their currency to fund public works. And what's happening today? Basically, the bankers, the shadow bankers, the monetary system is a transfer of wealth, of your time, your energy, your knowledge from you, stored on a piece of paper called money, a pound, a dollar, a yen, a franc, pause, transferred to the bankers. And we become the satellites of the bankers, the shadow bankers. And I do not understand why nobody speaks about the bankers. Why is everybody so scared of the bankers? Why is everybody so scared of the bankers? Why are we so scared? That's what they're doing. And we know this. It's like we know. I'm here ranting. All these things I'm saying here are all over YouTube. You can watch a documentary about some nerd explaining about the money and the bankers. Okay, what now? What are we going to do? We know. We know. We know. We know. So let's fast forward a little till in recent times. That's around when money was pegged to the United States dollar, and proxy, the entire global economic system was pegged to the dollar, stating the dollar is, in fact, the global currency that we trade through. Okay, so it was around World War One when that began, because Europe engaged the Great Britain, the British, after taking over the entire world, being the greatest nation to be in modern history. You guys started to go to war with some mustache guy out there. Sure, buddy, sure thing. And during your war, United States was in its beginning age, in the age of virtue, money, and all these good things we were establishing in the United States. And we did not engage into your war until we saw Daddy, no Diddy, Daddy being beaten up, being obliterated during the war. And then we came in at the end and we rescued you. So America got a lot of gold from that. The Europe was paying America in gold, while you took your men, your young youth men, from making cars to tanks, for making toothpaste to making guns, and you started funding your war, printing your money, and then rather not printing but paying us in gold. And that's why Americans think war is good for the economy. It's not. If you're supplying the supplies for the war, yeah, sure. So America was gaining all this gold around that time. And then at the end of the war, for like 6 years, this was happening. At the end of the world decided to say, this is not going to work. The global economy is going to collapse. Let's have a Bretton Woods, right? Where we established that the United States would be the global currency at a ratio of 40% or so, meaning $50 for every $20 worth of gold, something like that. And then time went on, history repeats, America gets comfortable and then starts to print all this money. And then some fuckface in France realizes, hey, these guys are printing way more money than they got gold. Hey, here's my gold. So basically, the United States dollar was a claim check on gold, right? This is what happened historically. History just started to repeat itself. The French started asking for the gold. Other countries started asking for their gold back. America started to lose its gold. Like 50% of its gold started to go around this time, until Nixon, the famous Nixon, and the famous 1971, we all know what happened. Nixon took us out the motherfucking gold standard. He said, fuck y'all. We're now fully going on a fiat system on a global stage. Was this a plan by the bankers? I don't think they're that smart. They might be. I just think it's all coincidence. Human nature and history seemingly just repeating itself. So, this is funny how history repeats. So Charles de Gaulle, that's his name. He started it. He started to get back his gold that we established at the Bretton Woods. Just getting my facts correct, is the United States dollar was trading for an ounce of gold at $35. I don't know what it is today. I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. But it's thousands today, right? So it started at 35 bucks an ounce. So that was what it was trading at. And after the war, America had 2/3 of the world's gold. And Europe had all these fucking dollar loans that they had from America. They had all these dollars. So definitely the global economy was going to collapse. You just needed to get on the dollar standard, I guess. That was the argument. 71 comes. We have no reserve ratio now. It's a Wild West. Every single world currency is on a fiat standard. There is no more gold. What a sad reality, right? Not knowing the consequences of that in history, it has 100% failure rate. So you have a system that has failed 100%, and now the whole world is on this system. To conclude all this stuff, is the world basically had a bank run on the United States and getting their gold back. And the United States said, fuck y'all, you can't get your gold back. Our currency is the gold now. And that's where we are today. And when you look at the seven stages of a civilization, I want us to now pay attention here and let's dissect why civilizations go extinct. Clearly, it's for one solid reason. It seems that civilization has no objective. After you establish sound money and quality money, every single stage, if I am not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like we're now funding comfortability. It ultimately comes down to that: the comfortability of the masses, and then the ones in power looking to retain that power, at least. My argument! My argument is we should have a clear objective. Individuals have objectives. Companies have objectives. We have mission statements. We have goals that we want to accomplish as individuals, as institutions, as companies. Countries don't seem to clarify that part. Why don't we start there? Once we establish sound money, why don't we say, hey, our objective is not to be comfortable. Our objective should be, maybe let's see. Maybe let's think about what holds a civilization? What glues it? Remember that thing I said in the beginning? Economics. Economics makes everything possible. Industry makes everything possible. Why don't we build our entire civilization of this one concept? And let's see where that goes. So let's forget about the public works. Let's forget about the wars. Let's forget about the massive military. Let's just establish every single choice we make on our civilization on the basis of economic industry. Let's see how that might work out. The Greeks have tried it to do it the way they do it with the public works, and it collapses. The British tried, it collapsed. The Roman, it collapsed. I'm not sure about the guys that built the pyramids, but they're not here, so I assume they collapsed. Why don't we build one? So the United States of America is in a unique position. They have somewhat tried to build a civilization based on the deployment of capital. I think that's what's kind of happening. If you dissect America and its virtues, it's been built based on the basis of capital. But the problem is, it's in a constant battle of we're trying to copy what has happened historically, when we should be thinking about building a civilization based on a free market, on industry and industrialization, purely, and thinking about every single element of what holds a society together based on industry. That's kind of where I'm at. That's how you sustain the civilizations, folks. Until next time.